So it doesn't seem like I really saw much of anything happening here. I can see the blue outline that's generated by this. That's what this guide is. Oh. The guide is convenient. I can see it, but nothing, the force just simply wasn't big enough. So let's do it by multiples of 100 to just see. If we go too high, we'll just simply take it back down. But I want to make sure this is even working at all. So press play again. And then we can certainly see that it took effect now. Sweet. So we imparted our own force on this. So that's pretty cool. Let's turn off ignore mass though, because especially if we go to a higher number, we're really going to see the spherical nature of this, which I just promised wouldn't happen because the different masses should ensure that it doesn't happen. Thing is, right now it's ignoring the mass. It's just pushing these around as if they were particles. And in fact, that's really what it is. It's a particle operator. So turn off ignore mass, which means use mass, paradoxically. And now we're going to get a very different feel. The windows went flying. All these little bits of window, they have a very small mass. So they have a very high acceleration, whereas the bigger pieces really didn't move much at all. So let's keep increasing it. Even though the windows are acting crazy, like really the air resistance should slow them down. But otherwise, it's not wrong, just from a forces mass times acceleration perspective. So there we go. So now we're moving the pieces of the building, even accounting for mass. But now you can see how we're getting an interesting distribution of pieces the way they're moving. We're seeing small pieces moving farther, big pieces staying closer. So you get a nice gradient of piece sizes, which is what it should do. Now, in order to simulate the wind resistance, the air resistance I should say, to keep these glass pieces not going insane, there's a few things we can do. The thing that I like to do the most is just using a speed limit. It's not really physically accurate, but it is a straightforward way of art directing what things look like. So for speed limit, I'm going to say maximum speed. So maximum speed might be 25. If we do this, it'll work. It's going to make everything go whatever speed you were already going. Keep doing that. Oh, that's minimum speed. That's hilarious. Wow, that's really cool. Maximum speed, 25. What I was going to say was if whatever speed it was going, it's allowed to keep doing that. And keep going the same direction even. But if your velocity vector is so long that it has a higher speed, that's what speed is. Velocity is the direction, but it's also how fast in that direction you're going. So it'll say, is your speed in that direction so high that you're higher than 25? Well, then you're clamped at 25. We have a new problem though. You can see a hard edge around this hard line. That's because an awful lot of these pieces are being told that you're going too fast. They're all being clamped to the same speed, which is why we see this wall front moving like that. So we don't want that either. So we want it to be that speed generally, but I don't want to see this hard line. So turn on this use vex expression or vexpression thing here. What this lets you do is vary this parameter per point. So instead of them all having the same speed limit, we can randomize their speed limits, but keep them around this number. That way they don't all have the same number. The way that works is whatever the parameter is, so this parameter is called speed max. We can literally just say speed max right here equals something. So not @ speed max, and we're not checking for that channel of speed max. We're just saying speed max, just whatever the name is, which is again, it's just what it would tell you that, well, it doesn't tell you here, but that's what it is. We'll do it here. So I can say, give me a random number, meaning a number between 0 and 1, based on the point number. Each of these rigids has a point because they're packed pieces. Typically, especially in particle sims, you'd use like ID or something because there might be more points coming into your sim. If we had an ID by default, I would have used it. We could have set one up even before we came in here. In any case, we're not creating or destroying ridges in our sim, so it's safe to use at point num. So if I just left it like that, this number, randomly, these points will get speed limits between 0 and 1. Now that's obviously way too slow. So let's remap that 0 to 1. So use fit 0, 1, which takes an input of a number from 0 to 1. And let's remap it to two other numbers. So zeros will be remapped to 15, ones will be remapped up to 30, and everything in between. So now if I press play, this should have a fuzzier look around the edges when they explode. And I can already kind of see that it does. So now we don't have that harsh spherical wall anymore. Now it's a fuzzier thing because they're getting randomly inside speed limits. So again, why do it this way? Well, because I don't want necessarily to increase the drag so much, like actual air drag, which is what we talk about when we talk about air resistance. I don't necessarily want to make it so high as to affect how fast things are falling or how fast even the initial explosion is moving. Sometimes you do. But I just like being able to art direct the speed, because ultimately that's what we're talking about. The glass pieces were moving too fast, so make them not do it. I could even have made a group of just the glass pieces and targeted them that way. Now that said, by the time pieces fall on the ground, we do want to encourage them to come to a stop. Friction plays a role in that, but drag does as well. We want to remove some of the energy from the system that is the simulation. I'm going to save this. So what we can do here is, I'm going to make a little separate branch for our drags. It doesn't really matter, this is just more of an organization thing. Pop drag and pop drag spin. These two nodes we'll just use to approximate just a little bit of resistance from the air. And I do mean a little bit, because if I have it set to 1 by default, again, you're going to see it's going to look insane. It's going to look like we're underwater or something like that. Because a air resistance of a full resistance of 1 is really going to slow it down. And again, it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect the force due to gravity as well. So you can see how slow and weird it is. Pretty cool. If this is a building blowing up underwater, it would look cool. But that's certainly not what we're doing today. So we need to make this very small. Really small. 0.001 should be fine. The reason why is that, this is being applied all the time. It's being applied pretty much every substep. 10 substeps per frame. So it's 10 times this number already. So really, it's doing this, per frame. And then there are 24 frames in a second. So that's like saying this. So every second, 2.5% almost of all the energy in the system is being removed. That's not a little bit. And that's 2.5% per second. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds in this. So that means really something like this. By the time we're done with the simulation, a full 12, well, really more, because it's that times that times that. So it's probably closer to like 15 maybe. A lot of energy is being removed from the system. So that's why we have to deal with these very small numbers usually here. And in fact, if you don't believe me, if we look at the RBD bullet solver, with the defaults that they use, that is the default that they use. I believe it's in here somewhere. I'm not even going to look for it, but if we dive down into the simulation itself, they use the same nodes here, and you can see, theirs is actually a little bit higher than mine, but the idea is the same. They're just very small numbers to remove some of the energy from the system. Everybody does it. It just is the full ecosystem of your environment. There's the pieces, they collide, they have energy removed due to wind. It's all part of approximating the physical world. So inspired by what I just saw in that other thing, I will reluctantly increase this a little bit. As for the spin resistance here, we want a very small number here as well. We really don't want to discourage them from spinning that much, so I still want to keep this pretty small. 5e to the -5 means take this 5 and move the decimal point 5 spaces to the left. Just for the record, that's what that's saying. So let's back out of here. I'm gonna go to cache. Right now it's only storing 5 gigs of this sim for playback in memory. I'm gonna go to 50,000 because if you have some more RAM, you can increase it to maybe to 10,000. Just however many megabytes of your computer's RAM you want to devote to keeping this cached. You don't even need to increase it at all, technically. Oh, actually, I didn't increase mine at all, as it turns out. If you do the flipbook, you'll have the flipbook either way, and that won't really cost you any memory, except for the memory it takes to keep images in frame. But this cache refers to this blue bar that's filling up in the bottom. When I'm done with this simulation, I can, drag my cursor along the timeline to read the actual geometry cache as opposed to it just being in image form. So I'm going to let this run. Oh, I have the background still visible, unfortunately. So let me hide other objects. But now you can see I can play with this cache a little bit. And let me just let that run again. Okay, so that's done. And there we go. So we're on our way. We still haven't made our constraints yet, but we can see the pieces have mostly come to a stop by the end. There's still a little bit of movement, but it's only been 5 seconds since this huge explosion just went off. We can see though that most of them have come to a stop or are well on their way to stopping. So very good. Close, and let's move on to those constraints we keep talking about.